This from the Wall Street Journal headline: as a rising political star, Tulsi Gabbard paid to mask her sex ties, that is SECT, her sex ties to an alleged scheme. From the article, to defend and burnish Tulsi Gabbard's image as her political star was rising, her congressional campaign hired a public affairs firm in 2017 that tried to suppress coverage of an alleged pyramid scheme connected to her Hindu sect, according to interviews, emails, and Federal Election Commission records. RC, this caught your eye. Tell us why.
Yeah, Andrew, we interviewed Trevor Loudon a while back on Tulsi Gabbard. He sounded like a red alert. He's like, there's a problem here. Trevor has spent an extensive amount of time and has written a number of books where he's looked at every member of Congress and figured out their ties to communism or the CCP. And Tulsi Gabbard came up on his radar for her connections to the CCP, but she's also been on our radar. And we work to do this in fairness, Andrew, because Sherlock is a market research firm. But being honest, Tulsi Gabbard came on our radar back in 2020 with some of these strange connections to the science of identity movement. This is that kind of Hindu offshoot. And the guru of it, who she refers to as like a Dev Gara, is a former Hare Krishna member. And her parents and her had this allegiance to him, which included strange things like putting his toenail clippings in their food and worshiping his shoes to show loyalty. So these are things that give you pause. Now, in all transparency, Andrew, I was someone who was raised Baptist, converted to Buddhism for 25 years, and converted back. Here's the key to that. I understand and I can clearly explain why I was turned off by the church, why I came back, and now why I preach about the gospel actively. What is interesting about Tulsi in this instance is that while in this story, and the Wall Street Journal went pretty lengthy, it is a bit slanted because it's timed for Tulsi Gabbard's hearings this week. The thing that it did point out is that she didn't say no. And that should give people pause. And I think what you're going to see, or you have seen in her hearing so far, is that folks on the Senate side who do not want her confirmed are going to pull on that string. And it's going to be hard for her to convince people that she's still not associated with this when apparently she was blessed and given a certain level of access when she hasn't just come straight out and said, I'm not part of that. I'm not part of that anymore. Here was the issue. That's going to raise concern. And credit to Trevor Loudon, and you can find this interview that we did with him on watchmenaction.org. He was bang on about her and the things that we need to be on the lookout for.
Do you think that, I mean, we look at these quote unquote scandals or quote unquote ties, we see it every confirmation hearing, we have it in every political campaign. And I think yes, it goes to character, but one of the more important questions is, well, how is that going to affect, or how did it affect their execution of the responsibilities of their office? How does this tie to how a Tulsi Gabbard might fulfill her position?
Yeah, Andrew, the director of national intelligence is at the center of the surveillance apparatus, right? So the level of access that she has to information, your ties or your allegiances are critical. And look, there are some things in life that you can do as a private citizen that nobody really cares, right? But when you're dealing in something like this, you are certainly going to get scrutiny. If it was you or I that were testifying before the Senate, I would fully expect them to peel back the onion and say, well, Mr. Williams, on this date at this time, you were affiliated with this group. Why did you never deny it? So that's part one. Part two is the competence part. There was a prior meeting that Tulsi was in where she was struggling with information that I guess would be generally known for a director of national intelligence. She was struggling to connect the dots on something. When you combine that with some of her other ties, in particular a trip to Syria, there are questions there. So there is the side of it that is, let's say, political or association, but then there's the competence side. And ultimately, I wonder, in getting through this process, the level of capability there, or is this simply a stepping stone to something else?